back to Yerushalmi Pesachim. We are on Aleph on the base. Harav Zaira. Is that it? Yeah? Now, we're talking, Rabbi Yanai is going to talk about the Mishnah and Masechet Shabbos. Remember the two children that need a bris? Whether it was Shabbos Sunday or Friday Shabbos. So we're going to end up with the words of Rav Chisda. So, Rav Zaira. Mil said Rabbi Yanai Amra. From Rabbi Yanai we learn, Rush Shachar Chamoy Shel Shabbos Be'erev Shabbos. So, when it says in the Mishnah, a person's got two children. One has got a bris on Friday. One's got a bris on Shabbos. And you did a bris on Shabbos, the Friday baby. You are liable. Now, it's talking about a case where you had already done on Friday the Shabbos baby. You hear that? You'd already got it wrong. Done the Shabbos baby on Friday. And now you do the Friday baby on Shabbos. And you only had one child who really the bris should have been the day before. You had one child. You had no obligation to do a mitzvah on that Shabbos. So you're not tayeh b'dvar mitzvah, and therefore you are liable for a chatas. If, however, you did not do before Shabbos the Shabbos baby, and you did on Shabbos the child for the Friday bris on Shabbos, and then you still got the Shabbos one for Shabbos, then you're potter from a chatas because tayeh b'dvar mitzvah. Now, what about, that's all very well when you got both kids in front of you on Shabbos and you got both kids to do and you end up doing the one with the right time and the one which is wrong. But what about Molu b'Shachris? What about if you did the Shabbos one early this morning? Yeah, Shabbos morning you did the Shabbos one. You come lunchtime and you do the Friday one, Shabbos lunchtime. You've got no other mitzvah to do then. What would be the din? Are we going to say we're going to say, now you're chayav chatas? Or maybe you're potter because you're Dovid Ra mitzvah. Rav Zaira Amar, he said, Sava Rav Yana. Rav Yana wanted to say, if you did the Shabbos one Shabbos morning early, potter, you are potter from a chatas. Because this Shabbos you had a mitzvah to do. Now, although it's been done already, and now you're making a mistake and you're doing the second child, you're still Dovid Ra mitzvah. It's not the same as if you'd done the Shabbos baby on the Friday. That when Shabbos came in, you had no mitzvah to do. So that's Rabbi Yanai's version. As long as when Shabbos came in, you had two mitzvahs to do, the fact that you did the Friday one Shabbos afternoon, and the Shabbos one Shabbos morning, you're still Dovid Ra mitzvah, you're potter from chatas. Rav Abba says, you are liable. Look, when I'm doing the bris Shabbos lunchtime, there's only one baby here. There's no mitzvah for me to do. But Laida Mila Amar Rav Yanai. Now, in what respect did Rav Yanai say we're talking about a case where you did the Shabbos one on the Friday? If that's the case, why did he say you did the Shabbos one on the Friday? He could have said you did the Shabbos one this morning, and the din will be the same. Even if you did it Shabbos morning, the din will be the same. He's to us to tell you, he wants to tell you how you can come to make a mistake. You'll get mixed up between the children. You think this child that needs a bris on Shabbos was the one that needed a bris, you end up giving a bris on Friday. And therefore, you get the bris then. But it's not very common you're going to make a mistake with two children on Shabbos. Only you're meant to do one on Shabbos. You know that. So it's more likely that you ended up with the Shabbos one doing on Friday and so on. Now we come back to the words of Rav Chisda. That the P'tur of Dovid Ra mitzvah is only when there's one group that's not yet shechted the Korban Pesach. There's one Korban Pesach left. There was one group that haven't shechted yet. According to Rav Zaira was to say that you're potter because you had bris milas to do this Shabbos. That's what he was talking about. Yeah, you had a proper bris milah to do. When Shabbos came in, the two babies, one of them definitely needed a bris. So Rav Zaira, Rav Yanai would like Rav Chisda says, like Rav Yanai's explanation. Then, Rav Yanai pattered a chatas if you went on Shabbos morning and you did the Shabbos bris. Now, Rav Yanai here is not like Rav Chisda. Rav Yanai is saying the P'tur of Dvar mitzvah applies even now, Shabbos afternoon. There's only one child here, and the child was meant to be on Shabbos. Well, that was done this morning. And so it's the same thing to bringing another korban for the sake of Korban Pesach. That even if you've brought all the Korban Pesachims already, there's only one korban left, you're still potel for Toya b'dvar mitzvah. You hear that? That's the same comparison. You're potel because you're making a mistake in the dvar mitzvah. And it's not like Rav Chisda, who said you will be liable. Now, Amar Rav Mana Kun Rav Yosef, he said, Mata Amar Rav Chisda. Now, that which Rav Chisda said, he said that Rav Shimon. Like Rav Chisda said it, that fits in like Rav Shimon. And Mata Rav Yana Kurmeh. What Rav Yana said is like Rameh. Now we're going to explain this now. Now he says, yeah, actually, the two opinions seem to be like different Tanaim. Now you can't ask on Rav Mana, who is it? You can't ask Rav Chisda from Rav Yanai if one's following Rav Shimon's view of things and one's following Rameh. So you can't really ask of them if they're just following different Tanaim. So he says, Meshiva Dava Ben Rameh Rav Shimon. You can't ask from one Tana onto another Tana. Now Rameh, let me explain. He says the P'tor of Torah B'dvar Mitzvah is more lenient than Rav Shimon was. Rameh said, even you got a finite amount, right? Dovid shesh like Israel, you have a finite amount. And if you've not done a mitzvah, you're still potel. Rav Shimon said you're liable. And now it could be this is what they're arguing. Could be you're potel, even though there's no mitzvah still to do. I did the Shabbos baby this morning. I've got no mitzvah. But it could be you're still potel. According to Rav Shimon, you're Chaim. So don't ask me from Rav Yanai who says potel, which is like Rav Meir's view, and Rav Chisda who says you're Chaim, which is Rav Shimon's view. And when it says Ashkach on Pluga, he says, wait a minute. He said, we can ask a question Rav Chisda on Rav Yanai because we never find that Rav Meir and Rav Shimon are arguing at this point. Ashkach no Plugta ben Rav Meir Rav Shimon b'shir. Do we ever find an argument in this point? If the P'tor of Torah B'dvar Mitzvah applies when there's just the mitzvah to do, basically you've not yet done the Shabbos baby, or even if you've not brought all the Pesachim, we don't find they argue only in special cases. In this point, we don't find they're arguing. Who says they argue? So therefore we can ask Rav Yanai and Rav Chisda, even though Rav Yanai was said in the view of Rav Meir and Rav Chisda was said in the view of Rav Shimon. Now what about the children now? So these children, the mother makes a mistake. He does a mistake on Shabbos. How do we treat it? Is it Kedava Sheyesh like Kitzvah? Is it like where there's a finite amount? Right? There's one child who has a bris on Shabbos. Or maybe a Kedava Sheyesh like Kitzvah. Or maybe it's like something, the Torah never said how many bris milas are going to break Shabbos. We don't know how many bris milas are going to break Shabbos. So is it like a finite amount because there's one child? Or is it like an infinite amount? In Tabdino Kedava Sheyesh like Kitzvah, if you treat it as if there's no limit, the male will be potter even if there's no other bris to do on that time. Even if he's already done the Shabbos morning one this morning, then he's still Torah B'dvar Mitzvah because who knows? There's always brises to do, right? Right, you follow? Ain't like Kitzvah. There's no end to how many brises you might do on Shabbos. Of course, you can only do them if you're meant to do them. But this male's made a mistake and he's done it regardless. But if we treat it like a finite amount, look, there was one child you had, and you did that this morning. What are you doing now, right? Then there's another proviso. It's only if there's a finite amount. At least when I do the bris for the wrong child on Shabbos, the other bris still needs to happen. And that's why I'm potter, because I'm Torah B'dvar Mitzvah. Even though it's considered Dovid shesh like Kitzvah, yes, there's a finite amount, but there's still a bris to happen. And since I still have a bris to do, and I'm busy with it, and I'm worried about it, and then I carry on and do the wrong one, fair enough, I'm potter. However, if the other child already had a bris this morning, and now afterwards I go and do a bris on a child who doesn't need it now, then I'll be chayav chatas. The P'tor of Torah B'dvar Mitzvah is not going to apply with a limited amount when you're not torud. There's that other requirement, yeah? You've got to be involved and torud that you've still got a mitzvah to do. Okay. Now the Gemara comes back to the Pirush Mishnah mentioned in Masechet Shabbos. Now the original version over there in the Mishnah, before we changed the Girsa, was two children. One needed a bris on Friday. One needed a bris on Shabbos. You went and did the Friday one on Shabbos, you are liable. If one was Sunday and one was Shabbos, and you did the Sunday one on Shabbos, right, premature, Sunday one on Shabbos, Rabbi Eliezer says you're liable, Rabbi Yeshua says you're patur. He says, Yitzchok, he says, come and see. How can it be the Sefer, Rabbi Yeshua holds, remember what's the Sefer, what's the ratio, Rabbi Isai? The ratio is Friday Shabbos. The Sefer is Shabbos Sunday. You got that? Yeah, the Sefer is Shabbos Sunday. The ratio is Friday Shabbos. And we have an argument Shabbos Sunday. That's where there's an argument. So Rabbi Yeshua says you're patur Shabbos Sunday, right? That means what? You went and you did the Sunday one on the Shabbos. You hear that? Sunday one on the Shabbos. Day 7. You did it premature. Rabbi Yeshua says you're patur. And yet Friday Shabbos, when you do it late, he doesn't argue. He doesn't say you're patur then. Now there at least you're doing a bit of a mitzvah. Day 9 is a bit of a mitzvah. Day 7 is not a mitzvah at all. So how can it be, Yitzchok, how can it be in the Sefer of Yeshua holds, he did the Sunday one on Shabbos, you've not really done a mitzvah, and yet patur from chatos. And yet Ichazmana, if you do the Friday one on Shabbos, you've done a bit of a mitzvah, you are liable. Surely it makes sense the other way around. When there is a bit of a mitzvah, you should be patur. There are a mitzvah more than if you haven't done a mitzvah. Rav Chuna Amar, he said, Machafi Masnisa. This Mishnah is, you got to swap it around. Change the nusach. Right? In the Reisha, it's talking about you did the Sunday one on Shabbos. And then everyone says you're liable. Because that's nothing at all. The Sefer is you do the Friday one on Shabbos. You do it late. Then there is a bit of a mitzvah. And that's where Rabbi Yeshua pattered. You hear that? So he says change the cases around. Rabbi Yeshua pattered where you do it late, not where you do it early. As we find in the following price, at the Tanya Amr Shimon, but Rabbi Yeshua, they didn't argue. If you do it premature, everyone holds your true Chaim. Because you've not done any mitzvah. Look at where they're arguing. Someone who needed to do a bris on Friday, and he did a bris on Shabbos. Rabbi Eliezer says you are liable, Rabbi Yeshua says you are patur. So that's the way to have the girsa in the Mishnah. Okay. Rabbi Yanai keeps the girsa as it was. So then we have a question. How is it? If you do it premature, Rabbi Yeshua says you're patur. If you do it late, Rabbi Yeshua says you're chayiv. How can that be? Because of that question. Rabbi Yanai had that question. So he had to put the ratio of the Mishnah, where you do the Friday one on Shabbos, in the following case. You did the Friday one on Shabbos, and you're chayev. Why aren't I patur? Because you did the Shabbos one on Friday. You had 2 children. One needed to do it on Friday. One needed to do it on Shabbos. You swapped them round. You did the bris on Friday, the child that needed a bris on Shabbos. And then you did on Shabbos, the child that needed to be done on Friday. And that's why you're chayav according to everyone. Even though you've done a mitzvah. Because when Shabbos came along, there was one child who didn't need to have a bris today. So it's not Dovid bar mitzvah. But in the Sefer, Shabbos morning, there's 2 children. One of them needs a bris today. So Rabbi Yeshua patters for the bris of the other child because you knew you had a mitzvah to do, and that's Dovid bar mitzvah, even though I didn't actually do a mitzvah. So you hear that? So basically you've got the 2 children. Rabbi Yeshua says you knew you had a mitzvah to do, you ended up doing the Friday one on Shabbos, that's why Rabbi Yeshua says you're patur. Now Rabbi Ada brings another opinion of Tanaim about Dovid bar mitzvah. Rabbi Ada Barachma, he says, Zudiv Rav Shimon. According to both of them, we don't get the patur of Dovid bar mitzvah unless your kavanah was to do a mitzvah that pushes away Shabbos. Right? There's a Meir and Rav Shimon about, you had a kavanah to do a mitzvah pushing away Shabbos. They're arguing, do you need a ma'aser, which a bit of a mitzvah or not? That's fair enough. Those are 2 tanaim. Avol divrei Rabbi Yossi, according to Rabbi Yossi, afilu davar she'ein ma'asiyas mitzvah. You didn't do a mitzvah at all. You made a mistake thinking you were doing a mitzvah, right? Nevertheless, you are going to be patur. You made a mistake. You did something l'shem mitzvah, even though you were wrong. That's Dovid bar mitzvah, and you are patur. Now the Gemara now fits in the Brisa slightly differently. So imagine like this: You do a bris milah on Shabbos, and you've not yet cut all the skins. There's still some skins that need cutting. If you're still involved in the bris milah, you're allowed to carry on and cut these skins, these sinews, whatever, even though there's only a small amount which is not essential for the bris. They're not ma'akev the bris, but there's still a bit of skin to cut. You're still involved, you can cut it. That's not Chil Shabbos. You haven't finished the Ma'aseh Milah yet. You haven't moved away. Pirush, once you've gone away from the bris, you can only come back for the essential things, but not for the unessential. Not for the not essential. According to Rabbi Yossi, it's not the case. You've gone away. You go back. Even those which are not essential. Even though you finished the bris, now you can go back and cut all the skins you need to cut. And it's just a continuation of what we were doing before. And that's what Rabbi Yossi held. Hi to Rabbi Yossi. Which Rabbi Yossi is it? Where do we see Rabbi Yossi? We've learned in Sukkah, Rabbi Yossi Omer, Yom Tov Harishon Shel Chag, the first day of Sukkot, Shechal Yez B'Shabbos, which fell on Shabbos, the Shachach, right, first day of Sukkot, which fell on Shabbos, you forgot it's Shabbos, the Shachach, you carried the lulav into the street, which was Rabbin, and you're over the issue of carrying in the street. Your potter from Chatos, your kavanah was for the sake of mitzvah. Therefore your tov is our mitzvah. Now the main mitzvah, when do you fulfill the mitzvah of lulav? When you pick it up, right? Remember, when you pick it up, you've already done the main mitzvah. But as long as you take it, the lulav in your hand, there is also kir mitzvah all day. Like the old people of Yerushalmi, they used to carry the lulav all day, yeah? In Morlane, they used to have minhag as well. For Musaf, the chazan would hold the lulav and Musaf as well. Whatever. And therefore it's considered tov b'dvar mitzvah. So the same thing with cutting these strings, these skins, which are not ma'akev. You've done the main mitzvah. But if you carry on, it's continuation of the original mitzvah. And just like the main bris milah pushes away Shabbos, so cutting these strings also pushes away Shabbos, even though you've already moved away from the mitzvah. So therefore we can also learn that according to B'Yossi, your tov b'dvar mitzvah, even if you had a kavanah to do a mitzvah which does not push away Shabbos, like taking the lulav, doesn't push away Shabbos, but you're still potel tov b'dvar mitzvah. That's like the words of Rav Barach. Now the Gemara discusses the main words of Rabbi Yossi, who says you're potel carrying the lulav tov b'dvar mitzvah. Now are we going to say the same thing after second Shab Milah came? If you take your milah knife by mistake into the street on Shabbos to do a bris, you're potel from Chatzos according to Rabbi Yossi tov b'dvar mitzvah. He says after matzah came. Are we going to say the same? If you carry the matzah on Seder night to do the mitzvah of eating matzah, you're potel. If you carry it in the street, tov b'dvar mitzvah. Because by carrying it, there's no mitzvah in carrying it. It's just a hechsher mitzvah in order to be able to eat it. But maybe you're not potel. Min ma'adar Rav Yochanan, that which Rav Yochanan said, Rav Yossi, afilu piresh. You've gone away from the bris. You can go back for those skins which are not essential. They're considered a chelek of the mitzvah milah which pushes away Shabbos, even though they're not ma'akev the mitzvah, because there's a hiddur mitzvah. It's considered like a chelek of the mitzvah. And the Amra, this tells me, af Masechet Pesachim came. The same thing will apply if you carry the knife in the street, but af matzah came, and the same thing will apply carrying matzah in the street. Just like hiddur mitzvah is part of the mitzvah, hechsher mitzvah is part of the mitzvah. You make a mistake and you're doing a shame for the sake of hechsher mitzvah. I need to get my matzah to this house to be able to eat it. You are potel. You are considered tov b'dvar mitzvah, and you will not be chayav achatos. Okay, Rabbi, so did you enjoy that sugya? A real Yerushalmi sugya. That we had it in Shabbos, and now we had it again in Pesachim. Okay, halacha vav. Okay, here we go. Pesach, which you shechted on Shabbos with the wrong mashshava. Shachta shalai la'achlav. You slaughtered come Pesach not for the people, let's say for a sick person or an elderly person who can't eat gazais. Shalai le'mnuya, or for people who weren't included in that group. La'arelim, l'tzmeim, Tomei people not had bris. Chayav, you are liable. The Pesach is possible. You broke Shabbos by shechta, right? If, however, you did it la'achlav or shalai la'achlav, for those who eat and those who are not eating, limnuya v'shalai limnuya, for some of the group and others not in the group. Lemulim la'arelim, so for group, both lots of people. So Harav and Tmeim, party or potter from Chatos, because at least the common Pesach is kosher, There's no chil Shabbos. Some of the people in the group are able to eat it. Shachta, if you shechta Korban Pesach, benimsa bal mum, it's got a blemish, chayev. You are liable. You're shaking. You should have checked the animal. We're talking about a blemish, an external blemish that you would have noticed, yeah? So you're chayev, you should have checked it. Shachta benimsa treifa basesa, an internal blemish, the lung has got a hole in it, whatever it is, there's no way you would have known about it, then you're potter from a chatas. Now, what about a case where you haven't got people fulfilling their duty? Shachta, you shechted it on Pesach, on Shabbos. V'noida, shemashcha b'anim ez yada, the people who left this group, before the shechita, you find out the people weren't in the group anymore. They joined another one. Or shemezu, or they died, or shenitzmu, they became tameh, they can't eat. Potter, you're potter from chatas. Look, you had permission for what you were doing. You didn't know there was no owners on this Korban Pesach at the time when you shechted it. There's no way, you're not meant to check that, right? Now.
Well, you had an under. When you went to check, you had an under left. You were told. You
were told to go, and then suddenly someone has said, oh, I'm doing another group now. I'm not part of that group anymore. Now, one shechs on Pesach on Shabbos, and it turns out it's a blemish, he's liable. Which Tana is this for? L'Rameh, who holds you shecht on Shabbos a korban for the sake of Pesach, another korban, even though it's like a calf, which is not fitting, you're potur, Dovid Dvar Mitzvah. So the Mishnah is telling you, if you shecht a Baal Mum, you're chayav. It's not like shechting a calf. According to the Tana of our Mishnah, that if you're shechting Shem Korban Pesach, an animal not fitting, you're chayav chatas, you shouldn't have made such a mistake. That's obvious. I mean, shechting a Baal Mum, but you're chayav. Now we have Maharag's According to Meir, the P'tur of Dovid Dvar Mitzvah, is it where you're actually doing a mitzvah, like another korban for the sake of Korban Pesach, or maybe when you're not actually doing a mitzvah? So we can learn from Rabbi Elazar what his view is. I see Rabbi Elazar with Shimon ben Lakish. Rabbi Elazar fits in like the view of Rabbi Lakish. Gemara Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish on says Yesh Masiyasa Mitzvah. Rabbi Meir holds the P'tur is only if there is a mitzvah to do. Came Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Elazar says Yesh Masiyasa Mitzvah. Also, there is a mitzvah to do. It's like Rameir, you're shechting Korban Pesach, it's a Baal Mum, you're chayev. The reason is because Pesach is pasul, you've not kept the mitzvah which you're meant to do. He says this according to Rish Lakish, there's no P'tur of Dovid Dvar Mitzvah. But in Tema, you're going to tell me, Shan Yahu, still is different, Shuhu Baal Mum, it's a blemished animal. Baal Mum and Nagdav, no one makes a mistake with a blemished animal. You can easily tell the difference between a blemished and a non-blemished. And therefore you're chayav when you shechted a Baal Mum for the sake of Pesach, because you should never have made such a mistake. And therefore it could be that Dovid Dvar Mitzvah you're potter even if you're doing a mitzvah. But here the chayav is because you should never have made such a mistake. But if that's the case, Harei Egel, no, a calf, no one makes such a mistake. Harei Ein Dakil is Chalef. No one's going to swap that for a Korban Pesach, which came from sheep. But Rabbi Elazar said, Divrei Rameir afilu Egel. But according to Rameir, even a calf, you're potter because it's Dovid Dvar Mitzvah. Even though no one's going to swap a calf with a goat or a lamb. It must be. The reason why you're chayav when you shecht a Baal Mum for the sake of a Korban Pesach is because there's no mitzvah here. As opposed to shechting another korban for Pesach, even a calf, at least the korban is kosher. There is a mitzvah that's been done. Rabbi Yossi, he is by Rabbi Yochanan. Even you're going to tell me, Rabbi Elazar holds like Rabbi Yochanan, the Dovid Dvar Mitzvah applies even when you're not doing a mitzvah. But still it fits in. I still understand why, when you shech a Pesach and it's a blemish, you're chayiv. Do Rabbi Yochanan Baal Mum, ein dakil is chalef. A Baal Mum, you're not going to swap it. But Egel dakil is chalef. A calf you will swap. So Baal Mum, which is possible in all korbanos, you're not going to swap that for a Korban Pesach. So you're chayav on shechita, you should never have slaughtered it. You should never have made such a mistake. A calf is kosher for other korbanos. Therefore, there's a chance you will use it for Korban Pesach. And that's why this reason, that's what the mistake what the person made. He thought it's kosher for Korban Pesach, and therefore it's potter because of Dovid Dvar Mitzvah. You follow? It was a mistake. You can understand he did a calf instead of a sheep. Fair enough, he made a mistake like that. That's a possible mistake. But a blemished one, there's no chance of swapping a blemished one. Now, then the Mishnah says, if you shecht and it turns out to be a treifa, an internal treifa, you're potter. In order to know that this animal is a treifa, you need to check the inside of it, and that you can't do until after shechita. So if you shechted it's a treifa, you're onos, you're patur. If it was an open treifa, then Chaim, you'd be liable. This is the view of Rav Shimon, that when you make a wound, you might destroy by making a wound. He held you're still chayav. There's no purpose for it, right? This carbon is a treifa, it's possible. You can't eat it. There's no tikkun, there's no correction by shechting it. And mekalkalin usually, destroy things. You're usually patur from chatos. Right? You're not chayav on a malacha unless it's like a masakin, a tikkun. However, one who does malacha in the way of kilkul and destruction, you're patur. It's not melachas malsheves, which the Torah said. But when it comes to making a wound and bringing out blood, according to Shimon, mekalkal is chayav. If one who shechs a korban pesach, it turns out it's a treifa openly, you're chayav chatos. And also Rabbi Yaakov Baracha, Rabbi Yirushalmi, Rav Shimon Lakish to Rav Shimon. They said this is the view of Rav Shimon. You hear that? He doesn't hold mekalkal, he holds mekalkal v'chabura is chayav. So therefore you're liable on that. Some say this is the view of Rav Shimon that Tobit's Bar Mitzvah. Okay. Right, let's carry on. Now, if you shecht and it turns out that the owners are not part of the group anymore, you're part of it because no one told you. You move your hand away from Korban Pesach. You're not part of the group. And now there's no owners here. Gufo Kov Shlomim. It can be brought, this animal, as a Shlomim. Rav Yonah, he said Shlomim Kesherim. This is a Shlomim. It becomes a Shlomim. You offer this up as a Shlomim. Rav Yosef, he says Shlomim Pesulim. He says no. It's possible. It can't be a Shlomim. Wait till you get blemish, you redeem it, and with the money, you buy a Shlomim. We've learned in the Mishnah, if you shecht and you find out the owner is not part of the group, you're potter from a chatos. Now, what do you think potter from a chatos means? Sovereign. They wanted to say it means potter and must be kosher. That therefore, if you are potter, the carbon is absolutely kosher as a shlomim. And that a shlomim shechted for the shem of Pesach is kosher. And that goes against Rabbi Yossi, who said it's possible. Everyone says, no. Pastorally, they explain the mission of potter. Yes, you are potter, but it doesn't mean it's kosher. But possible. The carbon is possible. The P'turis were chatas because they were onos. You didn't think that the owners have gone away from the Korban Pesach. Now, the same idea of Masechet Pesach brought as a Shlomim. Rabbi Yasser Rabbi Yechon. Ein lecha Pesach gufa kov Shlomim. The only case where the actual Pesach itself can be a Shlomim is Elash Sha'avad. You got lost. V'nimsa ma'achar shekippur abanim. You found it after the owner had his forgiveness with another one. So where the owner has taken his hand away, it can't be brought as a Shlomim. And that's like the view of Rabbi Yosef. It's possible to be a Shlomim, right? You let it graze and then you'll take the money, whatever. But hard to be, right? We learned in our Mishnah. If you shecht and you find out the owner's not there, potter, you are potter. So remember, they think potter, that must be kosher, that the animal must be fine. It must be a Shlomim. That goes against Rabbi Yochanan, and he said it's possible. So he said, no. Possible, yes, when you are possible, but possible, I'm afraid, it's still possible. You're potter from a chatos, because you're honest. What could you have done? Shmuel, he says, Kasha amru b'chatos mesa. Whenever, now remember, there's 5 cases of a chatos which has to be left to die. Remember, if the owner dies, or if he's got too old, or you lost it and you found another one. Yeah, or Vlad chatos, tomorrow's chatos. So there's 5 cases where the chatos, it has to be left to die. Chatos mesa. Asham, you leave it to pasture, right? So kiyotze by Pesach kufay korev shlamim. For any carbon, which, if it was a chatos, it would be just mesa, it'd have to die. If that's the case, you can't offer it up. Chatos mesas, we don't wait even to get a blemish. We just take the food away and allow it to die. That's the child of a chatos, a swap of a chatos where the owner died, chatos has got too old, and a chatas that was lost, and you had a forgiveness with another one. So kol shamra b'chatas mesa, if it happened with a Pesach in such a case, it itself can be brought as a shlomim. Not like Rav Yochanan, who said a Pesach that was lost and you find afterwards that can be brought. No. Now this is one of the chatos ha-mesais, right? The chatos where the owners died. Kuntiv Shmuel, a Pesach when the owners died, the actual thing can be brought as a shlomim. But we've learned in our Mishnah, if you shecht and you find out the owner's gone away or died, you're potter. Now potter implies it's no good. Savri made my potter apostle. Sounds like it's apostle. Even though the carbon's apostle. Right? And this is a question on Shmuel. He says the carbon is kosher to be a shlamim. So possibly again we have to explain it means potter because kosher. Yes, the animal is kosher as a shlamim. That's like the words of Shmuel. Now we come back to the question we asked from our Mishnah on Rabbi Yossi b'shem Rabbi Yochanan, which is mashma that a Pesach when the owners has gone away is possible to be a shlamim. Based on our Havana that Kavodas the Mishnah is the potter is because the carbon's kosher. So he brings another tiras on this question of Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi b'shem Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yehuda. You know something? Our Mishnah is the view of Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanina and Tamar we've learned later on. Don't start slaughtering Kam Pesach if there's only one person part of the group. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. That's the view of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi Mateh. Rabbi Yossi allows it. So it sounds like, not all the people went away from the group. One person was left here. And Mishnah says, look, don't start slaughtering Kam Pesach if there's only one person in the group. So don't push away Shabbos for that. But the carbon's kosher. So you're part of from a chatas. So it could be the Pesach. The people have gone away, and there's no one left, so it's possible. He asked in front of Rabbanan, when now, you're telling me, you might be potter what you've done, and the animal's kosher. He says, where do you find such a phrase? Potter v'kosher. Where do we see the word potter from chatos, that the carbon's possible? Where do we find potter that the animal's kosher? Where do we find this? He said, we see it, because Tanina Lacha, we've learned, if we shecht it for those who can eat, those who can't eat, those part of the group, not part of the group, you're potter. But Tanina Taman, and there we clearly say kosher. The animal's kosher. So Lashon Patur can be that the animal's kosher as well. Okay. Now, if you shecht and you find out, the owners left the group, or the owners died, you're potter. But Al-Kula, in all these cases, where the owners left the group, or died, Rabbi Shmuel b'nai Shabbat Mabreka, he said to Uba Surasai, so leave it a bit, like all kodshim psulim, it needs burning. Don't burn it now. It was Erev Shabbat, Erev Pesach, right, on a weekday. Don't burn it yet. Wait for it to decay a bit, one night, psulina, and then you burn it. Now, at the end of the brisa, it says the rule as follows. If there's a problem with the actual animal, just burn it. A problem with the blood or the owner, you wait a night, and then you burn it. So any carbon that's posel aguf, like pigul or noisa, you just burn it now. A carbon that's posel with the blood or the owner, let's say the blood got spilt, or the owner's died, the psul is not so posel, so severe. Right, so it's a design of kodshim if you just burn it now. So we wait till tomorrow. You follow? We wait till tomorrow. We want it to go overnight as well, which is a psul in the animal, psul aguf, and then we can burn it. And it also says in the brisa, that pigul is psul aguf, and you burn it straight away. But if the owner was tamei or the owner died, that's psul in the machsheh, is something else causing the trouble, and therefore you need to leave it overnight. You can't just burn it straight away. And based on this cloud, Rabbi Yossi asked, I understand. Look, you have to leave it overnight. If the owners died, or they became tamei, it's not a problem with the animal. Problem with the owner. And so they died, they became tamei. So the carbon is not possible only because of something else. So there's no one who can eat it. But mashchu abalim es yadam. If the owners have gone to another group, why do you need ibul surah? Why do you have to leave it overnight? Mana kion, what are we talking about? In b'chayim, look, while the animal was alive, the people joined another group. So marsheh, then is this just psul of Machshir HaKorban? It's like psul of the person, the blood. I mean, psul machshev, psul agufu is the problem with the carbon. It's left without any part of the group. It's like shechting a Pesach without any group, which is possible. So why do you have to leave it overnight? Look, if the owner only changed his mind after Shechita, but during Shechita he was part of the group, well, you can't change your mind after Shechita. How can you change your mind after Shechita? You can't go away from Korban Pesach after Shechita. You can only do it after Shechita, not after that. So the Gemara answers, we're talking about a case where, you know what, they left their Korban Pesach, they joined another group while it was still alive. But since the Torah gave permission to people to move to another group, psul machshehu, it's not such a severe psul. It's not considered a psul in the animal. It's psul of the machsher, of the person, the ta'on sarah, and you have to leave it overnight before you start burning it. I'm stopping here, I'm afraid.